What is buffer time? What is buffer time? Is what buffer time?
Oh boy, Buffer Timers, we've got something special for you today. We're going to talk some Quantum Leap versus Star Trek. But before we get into it, let's go around and introduce ourselves. I'm Dustin from Best of Trek, Worst of Trek.
I'm Scott from Opinions No One Cares About, and I am definitely not the evil leaper sent here striving to put wrong what once went right.
I'm Windgrace, and Scott Bakula may or may not be inside me right now.
Damn it. So good, I wish I thought of that.
You wouldn't be able to tell us if you did. You shouldn't tell us. I mean, you might be endangering your own existence. You may never get home.
Maybe I'm supposed to correct you.
I noticed it's very, very telling that you don't have any mirrors around you.
Oh, that's a good point.
I don't think we have any Star Trek news this week, thankfully. First time in a while.
Right?
So, let's get into some Quantum Leap versus Star Trek. What makes Quantum Leap worth watching as a franchise?
Just all of it.
Right? I mean, the basic premise is, as far as I know, pretty fresh and original, not only for its time, but for like science fiction in general. There's something I don't know if I'm missing something else that happened that was similar to the whole idea. Or if they got the idea.
There's probably like a Twilight Zone or an Outer Limits that kind of addressed it, but for the most part, it's the first real knuckle down, do that type of story. But it's just the feeling the show gives you as well. It's got that sort of that veneer that shows back in that age kind of had that hopeful feel, but it also has like a sci-fi feeling, but it doesn't take itself so seriously that you need to know the nuts and bolts of exactly how everything works and the formulas and all that stuff.
The writers didn't even know how any of it works. I mean, episode to episode, like how Al sees Sam changes and how the leaps work change. One quote that came up, I don't remember, it's in one episode, like somewhere around like season 4, where Sam tells Al, like, oh, success has nothing to do with leaping. But yet before that, it had always been like, oh, we've got to do this or you don't leap. And in the new show, it's always being told, oh, nope, you got to do this or you're not going to leap.
Yeah, and there was like that straight up that one episode where like they guaranteed that, you know, it had to be a success because Sam was Al. Like a younger version of Al. And then as Al kept calculating the odds of him failing, going up and up, when it hit 100%, he disappeared and Sam had a new, let's call him, companion.
That was a great episode, but I always have to think that if it was 100%, then how could you ever get Al back?
Yeah, that's fair. Although I think a lot of those this isn't set in stone yet.
The rules are only there so they can change them.
And that's basically in this wonderful episode that starts with Terry Farrell with no clothes on, i.e. Dax. And the episode has a Commander Riker.
My heart has a Commander Riker.
We're going to talk a lot today about the crossovers. 2 years ago, I started putting together a script of all the crossovers between Quantum Leap and Trek. I got to around 150, and I have never been able to get the whole thing together.
Are you including like main people like Scott?
Yeah, okay. Yep. Everybody that I could find, even like little background actors that don't have a name. Yes, Gannon, you need to go see the show.
Old and
if
new.
You can find it. The only problem with the old one is it's not on any streaming service now. I know you can find whatever you want on the deep web, but
we don't judge.
It's out there.
I might do the same thing. Miss me some Quantum Leap.
No, I swear it was on Peacock 6 months ago, and then they just kind of like erased it from history.
It probably was, and they're
Sure,
doing
why
the
not?
same thing to the new one right now. That's they're a Peacock exclusive. Season 1 disappears in a week. I don't know where that's going, and season 2 disappears in 2.5 weeks. So I've got
Come on,
that long to
Netflix.
see season 2.
Come on, Netflix.
This possible,
That'd be
everything
my
else.
guess, or Amazon.
or I don't know, Shudder for Halloween for some reason.
And this clip here, I haven't tried it, but I've read that the first scene where you see her on the beach, if you run it through some stuff on your computer and like decontrast it and stuff, you can totally see her naked. She was naked.
You haven't tried that, okay?
I have not personally, but I have it on good authority. But if one wanted to see Terry Farrell mostly buff,
That is super
There you
interesting, Bill.
yeah, that's kind of true.
Yeah.
Or is he the only sane one and the rest of the world is insane?
And he did it all with his leaping.
Oops. Whoopsie.
Ah, well.
So, other than obviously like all these characters, like Terry here, what's the biggest similarity between Quantum Leap and Star Trek?
I mean, the most obvious is that they're both science fiction. And, the fact that you can say they've both dabbled in time travel, but Quantum Leap took it to a little bit more of an extreme.
But it's less sci-fi as a show, for sure. The only thing about Quantum Leap that's
It's true,
sci-fi
yeah.
is the premise and a couple of episodes.
And they even treat that half the time like it's more of a metaphysical thing, less of a sci-fi thing.
Right.
The new show is definitely more sci-fi.
Yeah, they definitely went hard twist on a sci-fi and technical. But I think it's more like that, showing you that a person specifically or people can turn things for the best. It's more of a, as opposed to something that's like a grand space epic. They're both hinging on moral decisions of a specific people or group of people or something like that.
True.
I actually think versus the 4 shows that we're talking about this month versus Star Trek, this is actually the closest, other than obviously the settings, because it's the exploration of humanity underneath everything that underpins both this show and Star Trek.
Yeah.
So this could be Time Trek.
It's that good timey-wimey stuff.
Give it a couple weeks.
Yeah, that's and I meant to mention when he came in today that we have decided to change around our schedule that has been announced the last couple of weeks. Next week we're going to do Battlestar Galactica versus Trek, and in 2 weeks we're going to do Doctor Who versus Trek, just to make it easier for a couple of people to make those shows.
Yeah.
So do you remember, I wasn't alive back then when it first, well, I was there in the early days, but is this the first real mainstream usage of the word quantum?
Probably.
I would think so, yeah.
So then it probably influenced Star Trek to make everything quantum, and then the Orville stuff. As far as being a buzzword.
That is an appealing prospect.
And then, of course, now you have products like the quantum dish detergent and the quantum batteries.
So as far as similarities, I'm doing some kind of poll every week here. I'm very, very surprised at how this one turned out. People actually like Quantum Leap better than Enterprise as a Scott Bakula show.
You should have used a different thumbnail for Enterprise where he doesn't look so goofy.
Oh, that was the whole point. Take 2 very goofy shirt off moments for our dude here, who
Scotty
in every
Bass.
production he has ever been in, the producers will take every opportunity to get his shirt off.
Okay. Quantum photon torpedo, yeah.
So what's the biggest difference between this and Star Trek?
I think what it is they're both trying to teach the same moral lessons, but Star Trek, taking place in the future among many different aliens, has to use metaphor, whereas Quantum Leap, we're looking back into actual things that happened in Earth's actual past, can be way more direct about the lessons that they're trying to teach. And I've forgotten which episode that is. Is that part of... No, that's not it.
The color of... Oh, God. There's another word there. The color of something.
Is he a pool shark?
No, this is the one from season 1 that's basically driving Miss Daisy, but way more awesome.
Right.
The first time he ends up in an African American, and
it's more narrowly focused in Quantum Leap generally too. Kind of just focused on...
I'm fielding this question, but go on.
Okay. Just more focused on a couple of people, primarily whoever the hell Scott's in this time, and the surrounding people that hinge the change of reality.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Scott's take, basically, that the biggest difference is how they approached the topics that they talk about. And obviously the medium, where this one's completely set on Earth, and though the way I understand it, there's a book that takes place on an alien spaceship.
I pulled that off.
Well, there was that one episode where the dude, where he leaps into one dude that like believes in aliens, and then he gets taken up into the ship just to Sam leaps. So, it's not that far out.
Yeah. And to answer your question, Del, as far as I recall from the first run of the show, no. But they did once twist the rules and let him leap into one of his ancestors back during the Civil War, where he inadvertently helped give Martin Luther King his last name.
And there were a couple fake outs where he thought he was in another time at the like little stinger for the next episode.
Yep. Yeah, like the one with Captain Galaxy, which featured Tom Paris's dad.
Yes, Admiral Paris. Oh, that's a really good one too, because that's where he wound up giving himself his own theory of time travel.
The longer answer to Dell's question, though, it's rumor and conjecture, but there's enough evidence to say it probably was going to happen if there had been a season 6. The very next episode from the final one was going to take place in a bar in the future, where the final episode took place in a bar like on his birthday.
The day he's born, yeah.
And he started in the far off future of 1999, by the way, when the show started.
Talk about hopeful vision of the future. Like that original picture you had up, Dustin. Like, look how hopeful they were for future technology of 1999.
Yeah, right?
And not only that, they had AI. Weirdly horny AI.
I'm kind of disappointed that doesn't play into the new show. There is a Ziggy, but it is not it's not the weirdly horny AI, unfortunately.
No, and she's even credited in the show as the original actress who is involved in the show.
Even though, at least where I've gotten to, there's no voice for Ziggy. So but yeah, Deborah Platt, who did the voice, and was married to Donald Belisario, the creator, back in the day.
Well, there you go.
She's listed as an executive producer of the new show. And to even further go into Dell's question, in the new show, there's at least one instance of a leaping to the future. And the new show changes the rules. It's not within his own lifetime anymore. Which I actually like. I like taking the restraints off.
It's basically, they spent the last 30 years trying to cobble together more idea what the hell's actually going on. Or would it? No, I guess it would only be 20 years from 99, but 30 years for reality.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, before I move on to more of the Star Trek comparisons, there's a lot of debate on how the leaping actually works after the first one. Do you think it's God, fate, or time, or something else leaping Sam around? And
Is it fair
Ben,
to
for that
answer
matter.
that if we've seen the end and know the answer?
Well, even then, it's still not. Even that's kind of disambiguous when you get to the ending.
I guess, but
Because that Al didn't answer his question. Yeah, actually, he did. He told him Sam straight up that he's not the one responsible for leaping him. Sam asked Al,
I think I
the
missed that
Al
part.
in that last episode, not Al the hologram. Are
No,
you the
Al,
one
who's
leaping
eventually
me? And
going
he's
to.
like, and he tells him no.
Wasn't it more implied that it was Sam
Yeah, I'm doing it
doing
himself.
it for
Yeah,
himself? Yeah.
yeah, because they get all that squared away or whatever, and he's like, "Oh, there's one thing I have to do first," and then he leaps where he wants to go for the first time, and totally fucks up the show. By the way, just like to put that out there.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that last episode in detail here
Let
at
us
the
please.
end, because that it's either one of the best final episodes of a show or one of the worst or somewhere in between.
But it was definitely, that's one of the things I appreciated about the show that kind of went away after the mid 90s or so. The feeling that there might be a higher power, or the ability to tell a story where there isn't a clear cut answer. Eventually that kind of fell out of favor, and then it's no, this is just a hard explanation for everything. And that's one of the parts of the show that really added to it, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah, I did like how it was disambiguous through the whole thing, but we could still like explore these themes of, God and angels, freaking angels. That this comes up several times, including this bit of It's a Wonderful Leap, the play on It's a
oh,
Wonderful
that one.
Life, where this chick turns out to be an angel.
I've been thinking of a different one.
Well, technically,
yeah,
there's two,
I
because
remember,
there are
yeah.
two Christmas episodes, and in the end of the last one, this one, it's like, God or angels or something did some of the work for him, but
Sure.
it's still disambiguous. And I can't remember, is it Ed Bagley Jr. or somebody else? Whoever plays
It's the one
the
it's the
Scrooge
one
in
that-
this one is also the from 1996 Voyager, the bad
Oh
guy.
yeah.
Oh wait,
yeah.
really?
It's the same actor.
Chronoworks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was Ed Begley Jr.
Yep, I'm thinking of a different one entirely, though. It's one where, like, who was playing it? Charles Rocket was playing him. And, like, he could see Al, and Al was kind of giving him a glimpse into his future. And I think in that same episode, there's a reference to Donald Trump, and I hate it.
Yeah, that's well, okay, well, now we're talking about two different ones, I think.
Yeah.
Because this one
Oh,
here
let me get
is
back to
where Al like does the ghost thing and
Yep.
freaks him out. And yeah, it's Charles Rocket, you're right. It's not Ed Bagley Jr. But the other one where you get the Trump reference is the one with this chick, where he takes Trump and his dad in his cab.
Yeah. It's like someday there's going to be a big gold building right there. And like, ugh. We know.
What's the worst thing about Quantum Leap?
I mean, it's probably cliche, but the unceremonious ending, like the very, very ending, not the episode, because I actually like the episode. But
Yeah, right? It's great till that last fucking 30 seconds.
Because of the paradox. But yeah. I don't remember if it was with this show I wanted it so much or with Sliders. Because they have kind of mirroring premises. You've got Sam, who's quote unquote lost in time, whereas, the Sliders are lost across the multiverse. I can't remember which one it was. Where I always wanted them to be able to like return to their own either space or time at the end of the episode, with a lesson learned and ready to go out and leap or slide again.
Well, Sliders also ended on a cliffhanger.
Oh, yeah.
Where they're about to like go back and because they had a whole weird side tangent where like they started having time Nazis or whatever. And they were about to go back to their home world and like rescue it. And then nope, we're done. They also tried to tie Sliders into Quantum Leap with the character Maggie Beckett, who they tried to imply in Sliders was Sam's daughter from another universe, but like not directly.
Okay, that can stop. We know who Sam Beckett's daughter is.
Yeah, he ended up getting a daughter because of a leap, which is kind of weird.
It's a trilogy.
Yep. The only 3-parter. Or wait, was Lee Harvey Oswald only 2, or was that also 3?
It was 2, but he leaped into Lee Harvey Oswald a lot, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's something in season 2 of the new one that I want to reference here, but I don't want to spoil anything. It doesn't tie directly to anything, but just a concept that I wish they had.
Yeah, if you could talk about it generally, go ahead.
Just something that happened in the original. I thought they were replicating in season 2 of the new one, and then they went in a completely different direction, and I was a little disappointed. But I don't want to give spoilers because there's characters you haven't met yet in the second season.
Yeah. Bummer.
But they do, for people that haven't seen the new one, they do go out of their way to try and connect it in some different ways to the original. So it's not a completely brand new thing, but it is really doing its own take.
Yeah, I saw nothing but bad reviews on the new one up until I started watching it. It's like, I gotta say, after seeing the first season, it might be the best reboot of a show I have ever seen. Usually in most of these modern reboot stuff, it even if it's pretty good, it loses the feel of the original. I don't feel like this does. Do I think Al and Sam are the stronger duo versus Addison and Ben? Yes, but I like the ensemble cast in the new one better. There's more.
Well, there was an ensemble cast, and I think as someone who was following along week to week when the new one came out, there was a lot of cautious optimism for the show up until that trans episode, in which case everyone seemed to turn on it.
Oh no.
Yeah, without giving away anything, there's like Quantum Leap has always done. It tackles the moral quandaries and things and hot topics of the day. There's a trans kid in high school episode, and it got review bombed pretty badly. And is it the best episode of Quantum Leap I've ever seen? No, but it's definitely influential and a lot better than the review bombers have to say about it. No, I think Sam definitely felt emotions. And actually, I guess that's something I'll say about the new one. I don't think Ben, feels the emotions leap to leap. He's glad to have done what he did. But Sam, I do feel like he actually cares about the people that he's in.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Well, that kind of connects back to the ending of Sam, where he's doing it because he wants to. And he, as opposed to, not to give too much away about the new one, but it's more like a cluster F of I don't want to be here.
Oh yeah, I had meant to put up because Windgrace, you had found these. Did you get this off like a YouTube video or something?
Oh, those were off my YouTube video when I announced the show was canceled.
Oh, good with the woke.
Wow, I didn't realize this.
Did you not even? Do you understand? Oh,
yeah. This is like pretty much par for the course for every TV show today. But
yeah, it's the kind of thing that makes you wonder how they could, how could they have considered rebooting it? They must have known people were going to be like this.
And these are the people though that once you read it, it's like, did you actually watch the original? Do you remember specific episodes? Or are you just going on nostalgia fields? Because none of this makes sense to me.
They've missed the point. you don't. I mean, you don't watch the original and watch Sam leap into, you know, men and women and people of color and kids and like that one guy with Down syndrome and like dogs and chimpanzees, and then you find out it's coming back and it's somehow too progressive.
Yeah, it's the exact same as people with Star Trek. Oh, it became woke. When did Star Trek get woke? Fucking 1966. When did Quantum Leap get woke? 1988.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think the original is, barring that one trans kid episode, I think the original is probably way more woke. You know, just in the first
I think it's
season,
one of the comments. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, just in the first season, you've got this. You've got not this, but the
That's not
I had already shown it, but the Americanization of Machiko.
Oh.
You know, there's a bunch of these right at the beginning that like you cannot miss what this show is trying to say.
And especially for the time period compared to, you know, now as well, it was definitely hitting on more cylinders than you could even get away with in today's TV landscape.
For sure.
Yeah.
But I think the surface level reading that, I don't know if any of the ones I showed there was, there is not a straight white man in the main cast of the reboot, the remake. And that seemed to be one of the sticking points for people.
I hadn't thought about that, but you are absolutely right.
Oh yeah, that makes perfect sense because only a straight white man can look like other people in a mirror.
You want a fun fact here? This chick that plays Addison, she has no other credits before this, and she has become a really good actor. She's basically the real world Al. This chick was in the Army for 7 years. She's the first combat veteran to become an actress in Hollywood. She's got a law school degree. She's like the real world Al. She has done everything. And she's
mostly
she's acting
the
at a pretty
anchor
good level.
She's like the emotional anchor of everything. So yeah, go out and watch I would say go out and watch the new one, but it's leaving Peacock when? 3 days.
You got I think 6 days for season 1 and just over a couple of weeks for season 2. Yeah, I hope for everybody else's sake that didn't have Peacock. I mean, I didn't until just over a week ago. And yeah, I hope it goes to either like Netflix or Amazon or something that's more accessible. And it gets a new life because it's a good show that deserves better than the 2 seasons and dumped. Especially when I'm watching the new Night Court, which the original is the only show with a laugh track that I can condone and enjoy. But this new one, straight garbage. It's not funny. The writing's bad. The acting, I mean, to be fair, most of the writing from the original was bad, but the actors just brought it alive in this amazingly funny way. And it's just not hitting this time. Meanwhile, Quantum Leap gets canceled. But I can also see that Quantum Leap is a show that requires a lot more money because every week you got different sets and different characters. Where with Night Court, at least it's the same 3 sets on the same soundstage week to week. So at least it's cheap.
Did any of you watch Timeless? Was also an NBC show a few years ago.
Yes.
No.
Okay. They did a similar thing to that. Canceled after 2 seasons, and then they gave it a hurried 2-episode goodbye movie or something. But I thought it was a pretty good show. It was very like Quantum Leap-ish.
In a way, yeah.
But more of like a serialized time travel story.
Yeah.
That's probably not available out there anyways. NBC probably purged that too. But.
Very surprised. You ever see that one, Dustin?
No. No, I really haven't watched anything on NBC in years until I just got Peacock
that's fair.
About a week ago. Also going to say Twisted Metal. That I just finished that today. That is a great goddamn show, and I cannot wait for season 2. It's both serious and doesn't take itself seriously, and is self-aware about it being a video game property. It's just it has a little bit of everything, and it's done so well.
Is it confirmed a season 2 is coming?
Yes.
Okay, good.
But it hasn't even started shooting yet, so it's going to be a while. So back to the matter at hand, what is the best thing about Quantum Leap for you?
I think, again, it's probably cliche, but the chemistry between Sam and Al, that's the one thing you can expect from pretty much every episode, regardless of where and when they're going.
Yes.
Oh, the one where they switch places.
Yeah, this is a great episode.
Brilliant. But yeah, to piggyback on that, yeah, it's Scotty Bax. And I'm not even saying that because, he's an Enterprise. I watched Quantum Leap long before I saw Enterprise. And he's just got the likability and the charisma to succeed in TV, because his film career, I mean, he's never really been a leading man. I think the only thing I could think of is Clive Barker's Lord of Illusion, maybe?
I think the only thing I've seen him in is the straight to VHS or whatever it happened with it. Major League 3, Back to the Minors.
Oh,
Yes, that one.
Starring Scott Bakula.
Remember that?
I like that
I
one.
saw him in something
It's
where he was
about
a
what I
side
remember.
player, but I can't remember what it was now. It was like a Brad Pitt movie or something, I think, that he just randomly popped up in. But aside from that, yeah, mostly TV.
He did have that bit part in American Beauty, but we don't need to talk about that movie.
Really? You don't like American Beauty?
Kevin Spacey soured me on
I
a
was
lot
going
of
to say,
things.
is it just
Oh,
because
yeah.
it's Kevin Spacey?
Yeah.
There's too many other good people in that, and granted, he's the main character, but that's definitely in my top 20 favorite movies of all time.
The Informant, that's the one I'm thinking of. It was Matt Damon, The Informant.
Oh, yeah.
But yes,
Yeah,
aside from that, he was in Chuck and one episode of Always Sunny where he reprised his role as Dr. Sam Beckett. Maybe.
Interesting.
He did a cameo on, what was it? What We Do in the Shadows. The vampires got in touch with him because they literally thought he was a vampire because Bakula sounds like Dracula. Yeah. But yeah, he doesn't really have like movie star charisma, but he's got a ton of TV star likability, and it really helped to carry the show.
I think for me, the best thing, at least about original Quantum Leap, my favorite bit, and we're going to talk about some questions here very specifically to these, the Evil Leaper.
Evil Leaper.
Plots.
Oh.
I love it.
Oh, that's right. He shows up when, or she shows up when Sam is the kid with Down syndrome, and then she's ready to kiss shit up. It was really cool that like when they touched, like they could recognize each other.
Yeah, that little like morph effect.
Yes,
Little, like burn and morph effect. Yeah.
which probably looks terrible now, even if it's like upscaled. But that was so good.
Speaking of which, I think when it comes to the new Quantum Leap, one of the things that I still like better as far as like effects, I like the leap effect from the original Quantum Leap better. It's kind of weak in the new one.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, at least it developed over time, because when in the first few episodes, or like maybe like the first season, wasn't it just kind of like a flash of light instead of the whole like everything freezes and then he gets kind of blue and lightningy and leave, then comes back in?
Yeah, it's just kind of a like a weaker version of that same effect. It doesn't. It's not as flashy, literally. But as far as the Evil Leapers, Carolyn Seymour, her hologram, one of my favorite actresses in the history of ever, played 2 Romulans in Star Trek. Even though you would think it's probably the same character, it is not. She appears in season 2 when they go to the Iconian homeworld in TNG.
Yep.
And then in season 6 when Troy gets taken and put on the Romulan ship. But she is so great in both this and that. She's probably my favorite Romulan.
She should have been the one that showed up in Was it Nemesis?
Yeah, I had always thought that too. So, as far as my questions specifically about the evil leapers, what are they? Are they part of another project that got hijacked by the devil instead of God in the way that Sam did? Or are they actual dead people from hell?
Wow. I was only going to go as far as to say they're like a little more futuristic, because instead of like leaping around uncontrollably, they could pull, what's her name, Aaliyah out within like 48 hours if need be.
Well, it's something
So-
they talked about.
Yeah, it seems like they're just a little bit more advanced, and makes them a decent foil for Sam and Al. But yeah, I have to be honest. Even though they suggest at some point that God's taking control of Quantum Leap, I did honestly not think that the Evil Leaper might be controlled by the devil.
Yeah, you jumped in at a great time. I'll explain where this question came from for me, because I've got a couple of different theories. In the episode with where Sam leaps into the pool shark, there is a whole thing about they can't finish doing the show him the trigonometry of the table because the Pentagon needs power for something else. And I always think was that where she first leaped, and she's part of another project that they don't know about, that the government's doing in parallel, and then maybe the devil or whatever latched onto her leaps. But then when you get into the second episode where she comes back, which is this one here, The Return of the Evil Leaper, Zoe tells her that, you know what we had to do to claw our way out of hell. And then it's like, okay. And then in the last episode, you find out that dead people leap. So I'm conflicted on which way to go on that and what their actual origins are.
Oh my god! I apparently
time travel show.
I wasn't really picking up on a lot of this as a kid. I didn't even consider. But you're talking about dead people leaping. You're talking about Al's uncle in that last one, aren't you? Raised a glass to Sam right before he leaped out. I didn't even consider the fact that he was dead. Oh my gosh! Poor Uncle Stopa.
And the fun fact about Stopa, you wouldn't know that this actor is the same one that played Senator Vreenak in probably the best episode of Star Trek, In the Pale Moonlight.
And it's also a fake right now.
A fake!
Oh my god, he's doing the same thing.
Yeah. Typecast.
Who knew you could typecast a gesture?
Yeah, I do remember that hell comment, and I guess it's probably there so you could take it two ways.
Yeah, because even thinking back on it,
they actually are from hell, or they're mean it metaphorically, they rose up through the ranks in some terrible oppressive regime or something to get this job.
Yeah, because they had to fight their way back after failing to do whatever they had to do with Sam the last time.
I mean, I guess it depends on if you want to expand this whole thing out to multiverses, or they're from an aborted timeline or something. They're just a remnant, something like that too, an apocalyptic timeline or something.
Right.
They're just caught in the time stream surviving or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I lean more on that they're probably just another time travel project that got hijacked by the forces of evil rather than the forces of good, and then just kind of fell into it, because Aaliyah deep down seems to be kind of caring. She's just done so many of these evil leaps that she's fallen into, all right, well, this is what I got to do.
Right.
And it makes sense for the story of the show, yin and yang and all that. You got to balance the good with the bad. There should be an opposite force out there, so
yeah, I really wish it hadn't taken till season 5 to get to these. Okay, so we talked before about what the worst. I think we did do the best thing in Quantum Leap, which let us hear. Okay, let's talk about the finale. How do you feel about the ending of the final episode?
Yes, he never returned home, and that was his own fault.
Hit the space bar so the ellipses continues and says, yet.
Dot, dot, dot.
Until.
And I like the joke that you made before we even started this, Windgrace. That, oh, well, some Sam Beckett didn't return home. Doesn't have to be the Sam Beckett we know, because that Beckett has 2 T's in his name.
I mean, I guess the other way to look at it is if this is being written from the perspective of the time he leapt out of, he hadn't returned home to them yet, but that doesn't mean 20, 30, 40 years later he won't show up.
But he never, ever. I mean, I hope so, and I haven't seen season 2, so I'm of the new one. I'm really hoping they bring Sam home. Because Ernie Hudson even talks about it in season 1. Like, yeah, we started this. We're going to bring Sam home. Okay. But I'm betting 2 seasons was not enough to do it.
But first you got to find him, and he's the one leaping himself around, and he screwed everything up with a big paradox.
Or was that part of the plan? The Sam plan?
No, it was a literal paradox. I know, I guess we're spoiling the ending at this point. I get that Sam was just trying to do for Al, like the way Al did for him when he was in Vietnam, and he, watched his younger self be marched off to a POW camp for 10 years, so Sam had a chance to save his brother. Great. But everything that comes before that last sentence messes with the continuity of the show. Because we know that without Beth, Al was married like 5 times. And there were more than a few times when he drew on his experiences with his past wives to help Sam out. So if he was never married to anyone else, that ruins, what Sam was doing in the past.
Yeah, I had never thought about it till I was getting the screenshots for this today. Like, okay,
Like
so then what happens with Lisa here? And yeah, it is otherwise.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the rest of them, whatever.
Oh,
I mean, and I guess he never actually married her, but they just, they were together.
Mm-hmm.
But, and all of his other wives, he does not talk about affectionately, and never remembers which one's with. My 5th, my 6th, my 4th wife.
Much like she would later talk about her hosts. What host was that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's a good point.
That is really good.
So I think it's more of not, it doesn't necessarily have to hold tight and fast to a continuity as far as the timeline of Sam goes, because he's outside of time. So it wouldn't really undo his perspective, but then are you undoing things you've already changed if they happened before?
That's a really good question.
I think there is a twisted corner. It's all part of the temporal. Oh, wow. Okay, tie it all together. Why not?
This is all the work of Kovich. Kovich is that guiding hand. Crewman Daniels.
Did Daniels ever appear in Quantum Leap as like a little young guy running around?
Not that I know of. I mean, as far as the actor.
Yeah, the actor.
I don't believe
so.
I know he showed up in Scrubs, so how can we connect to that? No.
That is a really good theory, though. I like that a lot.
I do think These Are the Voyages would have been best if at the very end he did leap. He just said, oh boy, right at the end of the holodeck program or something.
You're not the first person to say that, and I love it. I absolutely love it. I don't know that it would have saved that episode, but would have made it more interesting, that's for sure. How do we feel about the rest of that finale, other than the absolutely baffling way that they tried to take it out? The whole thing with the other Al and...
The other Al, the other Ziggy, the other Gushy.
I mean, I think it's one of the best episodes of the series, as long as you omit that final moment.
Right.
It even though it was the end, and it wasn't supposed to be, I think it still did a pretty good job of culminating some things and giving us a little added oomph to the storyline. The people we've been following for so long.
I agree, and it's just so interesting. It's like so different than the rest of the series. Like he pops in and then he like tries to figure out who he is and like looks in his wallet and there's his ID, holographic ID from 1999.
What, you didn't have a holographic ID in 1999? Come on.
I remember when my IDs looked like that.
My face leapt off the card.
So have you seen the thought lost deleted ending scene?
Yes.
Okay.
I almost grabbed a screenshot of it, and thank Allison Pregler, Quantum Leap fan extraordinaire, YouTuber, for buying some cut footage that happened to have those pieces and releasing it to everybody else.
Okay, so
But yeah. Okay, yeah, for anybody that doesn't know, so there was, like I had said also about like a future bar. That was supposed to be part, and also there was a part that was at least, what am I thinking of, workshopped, or they did a trial run of it, but it may or may not have ever been fully shot on film. There's just some stills that exist where Al and Beth, after that whole thing, instead of him like not coming home, they're together in the future, and they're talking about, you know, how they can bring him home still.
Oh.
It's a much more hopeful way. And would have made a lot more sense leading into the new show. Because the new show kind of breaks my brain about it. Like, well, if he screwed everything up and Al just ended up with Beth, then why would he have ever had a reason to do Quantum Leap and things? Because we know, like, the only reason that, or one, maybe not the only reason, but one of the reasons that he became part of Quantum Leap was because, like, he probably wouldn't have gone late in life to get a quantum physics degree and then like become the angry dude that Sam met and tried to like calm down and be a friend to, and then brought him into the project. So there would have to be a whole different origin story about between their meeting, if that's the case.
And there are a lot of fun possibilities in the 2 seasons of the new one to explain that. And I think they might have done a lot more explanation to the original had they been given 5 seasons. But NBC is going to do what NBC is going to do.
Yeah, and everything I've heard, Peacock is the streamer that has lost the absolute most money out of the streaming services. So,
really,
you know, like I wish they hadn't canceled, but I kind of at least understand from their financial point of view.
See,
right.
they broke my brain twice, because the first season, and this is what I was saying before you watched it, I think it was, I don't remember, 12 episodes. Then halfway through season 1, suddenly they're like, we're giving you 5 new episodes this season. So they shot and shoved 5 extra episodes into season 1. So I'm like, oh, that must mean the show's doing well. And then they go and cancel season 2, like, without giving them much notice. So
I just hope at the end of it, I find out that Ben Song, I was trying to find a way to make his name without a vowel or something, but it really doesn't work. Never returns home, because that's the only way you can end it at that point.
I did that. I think I spelled it Ben Sog, S-O-G.
That makes sense. So, does Quantum Leap do a good job depicting stories with real famous historical figures? I'm trying to think. You only get a couple. You get Lee Harvey Oswald and the Cole Kennedy thing.
Well, and you get contemporary too with Dr. Ruth, things like
Marilyn
that.
Monroe's bodyguard.
She's like, oh my God, Dr. Ruth just died this year. I was thinking when I watched it back then, like, oh my God, this woman is still alive?
I mean, she was in her 80s back then, but you had baby Elvis. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right. That was like the next to last episode. That was weird. I always felt like that was weird slotting it in there and not like a little earlier in the season, but yeah, I don't know about the Elvis thing. The Elvis, I never really got into that one personally.
That was more of a like they wanted to look at the camera and wink, like, haha, look what we did.
Much like the end of the Lee Harvey Oswald two-parter, where like the very last thing Al says, no, in the original timeline, she died too. Like,
Yeah,
what?
so they had to make up some thing.
Yeah.
Or make us all think that we're really in the alternate timeline now.
Yeah.
Sure. Why not?
I did really like this, and I particularly liked the casting of Willie Garson as Lee Harvey Oswald.
Yeah.
Who was actually in another episode of Quantum Leap where he played the like 1950s detective sidekick, and they're all talking about I can't even talk in that stupid like, and his daisy crushes were next to hers. That one, it's in season 1. And
He fairly recently died too, didn't he? A couple years ago.
A couple years ago. And he was in the Voyager episode 30 Days. He was Dr. Riga that ended up going with Tom and trying to, do some eco-terrorism.
And he's also a pretty big component of Stargate for, I think, 4 episodes.
I've never seen that.
Really?
And he was one of the lone gunman or whatever that group of hackers was in X-Files. That
the lone
Mulder
gunman, was he in there?
But I'm trying to think. Then they wouldn't be called the lone gunman because there was 3 of them.
Well, they're the lone gunman because
their
like conspiracy paper was called the lone gunman from JFK.
Okay, I can't.
Yeah.
It's been so long since I've seen X-Files, but yeah, he was one of them. He did so much sci-fi, and as my wife showed me recently, watched Sex in the City. He was
There
part
it
of that
is.
also.
Yep.
He was he's a great actor overall, and usually he does like more lighthearted stuff, but he did an incredible job being like a really angry Lee Harvey Oswald. I think that may have been the first time we saw the waiting room too.
Oh, that's a good. So how do we feel about the waiting room and how that works?
I just wish they'd introduced it sooner, and that's, if anybody can't tell, that's what I'm mimicking here in my background. I'm green screening a blue screen here.
In a way, it makes sense because then you're reminded, oh, he's not actually, his body's not traveling through time. It's just his consciousness. But then it's not the whole thing because you kind of get that whole Swiss cheesing of the minds. And if he's going to take up space in someone's mind, they got to go somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Well, it kind of felt like they wanted a way to give some guest actors more to do. Once they started bringing in bigger name guest actors that they wanted to spend time with.
Yeah, that's right. They mainly did it with it was only used 5 or 6 times with like Dr. Ruth and in this one.
Right? She's like, next. She leaps out and the guy leaps in and smiles and he's apparently a vampire.
Yeah.
The little fake out leaps.
Yeah.
On that same kind of note, not that one, but the other Halloween episode where he leaps into this one where he's actually like knocked out for the whole episode and it doesn't really quite happen, but it's you get that one where like Al's the devil and whatever at the end. What'd you guys think about that one?
I like those types of episodes in general, even if they don't really fit to the canon of a show. Especially if they come out around Halloween. It always feels like a special sort of treat, I guess.
Yeah, I really I liked it a lot. I thought it was really interesting. I kind of wish it hadn't turned out to be like him knocked out and not really happened in the end. But I guess I'm also a little biased because I'm from Maine, and now I live like one town over from Stephen King, and you get to like the origin story of Stephen King in this one.
Right.
Yeah, and I think the only other like kind of okay, here's a weird thing I got thinking about the other day. When he goes beyond his own lifetime and leaps into his ancestor, if he was already born, what was he actually there to do? Because it's all like, oh, well, you got to get your great 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 grandfather and great 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 grandmother together. But if they weren't together, then he wouldn't exist. And then I was like, oh, well, maybe it was to get Martin Luther King's ancestor free. But like, we'd already know that he existed in the timeline because he'd been talked about before that. I know, I'm talking about time loops.
Yeah, right. Damn it.
Yeah, you can't think of anything, can you? There's no good reason that he actually had to go there. Unless it's a predestination paradox and he was always supposed to do it.
Oh no.
I mean, the thing I was thinking doesn't make sense. So I was thinking maybe he did another leap that undid it, but he would have had to go further back. So that
maybe the
wouldn't
evil
work either.
leaper undid it.
Ooh.
I hadn't thought about that till right now, but maybe that would make a little bit of sense, I guess.
They're trying to unravel his timeline so he doesn't mess with them anymore. Yeah. Take him out at the knees.
The follow-up question you had to that was, does Trek do a good job of depicting stories with famous historical figures? And maybe you can talk about some of the ones you had thought about Windgrace with that question.
I mean, the three that immediately came up, well, I guess four, were Stephen Hawking, Isaac Newton, Mark Twain, and Amelia Earhart.
Ooh.
Yeah, actually, all of those people, it does really well. Every single one.
Yeah, but then like a little earlier, you have their depiction of Abraham Lincoln.
Oh yeah,
well, that was fake Abraham Lincoln, so
yeah,
I guess.
I mean, I give him points for accuracy for knowing that Lincoln had been a wrestler, not so much for the way he referred to Uhura.
Yeah, I won't even repeat that. The word that he uses there, even though it's supposed to be endearing the way he says it. That episode it introduces us to so many great Trek characters that will have threads pulled on later in the series, but I cannot get past that first 15 minutes with Abraham Lincoln, like floating in space, and then we're just talking about all this like ridiculous stuff in the transporter room with him, and I just it's hard for me to get past that. Yeah, Quantum Leap does a much, 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 much better job.
But something Trek does do, which I found interesting, is they create their own in-between famous historical figures, which I always thought was kind of interesting, like our future, but their distant past, to kind of fill in the gaps a little bit. And I'm talking about real ones, not the one where they always do the three, like, oh, you've got Shakespeare and Beethoven, and then Caractacus of Vulcan 3.
Well, yeah, I was just like thinking, like, what historical figures showed up on Enterprise? And like, well, it's only really one that's like relevant to Star Trek, and that's Zephram Cochrane.
Yeah, you've got Cochrane. You have a broadcast from Colonel Green. Is that his name?
Yep, Colonel Green.
What's his name there?
One of the various Soongs.
I think at that point it was Eric, but still with an A.
Of course. A for AI.
Oh, God. I don't even want to get into how many Soongs there are and why the entire family lineage going back centuries looks like Data.
See, I always liked the theory, which I thought they were going to do, that this original Soong that they introduced in Picard was so narcissistic, he kept cloning himself and transferring himself into the new body, and then eventually switched to androids. until he redeemed himself and let himself die in the future. But
3 times. Twice? 3 times?
Which show did a better job of predicting the 1990s?
Well, I mean, clearly we didn't have any eugenics wars, even if those got pushed back. Quantum Leap was definitely a more hopeful look at the 90s, since that's technically where Project Quantum Leap originated.
Probably Quantum Leap, unless you're going to count Voyager's 90s.
Fair.
From, what was that episode?
Future's End.
Future's End,
yeah. Because that actually had Sarah Silverman, and she did exist in the 90s, so pretty accurate.
That was her first big break, too.
I mean, come on.
Yeah, Quantum Leap probably. I mean, both of them, they don't do enough in the 90s to give you a lot to work with, but yeah, Quantum Leap's much more hopeful.
Yeah. Like TOS thought we'd have space travel, Quantum Leap thought we'd have time travel. And to be fair, we had neither.
And I'm still waiting for my Back to the Future flying cars. It's way past 2015. Bro, get on that.
Well, we have 14 flavors of Hot Pockets.
Great.
That's exactly what the world needs. All right, I don't have any more questions. Anything else we want to compare here between the two shows?
I guess this is a question I was thinking about. We kind of talked about it a little bit. Which do you think, obviously for those who have seen the new version, which do you think did a better job of bringing their show back after a hiatus? Discovery or the new Quantum Leap?
Ooh, easily the new Quantum Leap. I mean, Scott hasn't seen it, but easily the new Quantum Leap.
I'll take your word for it.
Because not only do I think it's overall better, I think it's better in a lot of ways than the original. Overall, I think the original is better, but there's a lot of episodes in the original that are very soap opera-y and like, okay, well, he saved the day, great. You know, they're episodes that I can just get through. I don't think there's a single episode of the new one that I'm like, oh, well, yep, well, we got through that. They all feel like they have more weight to them. And it's even explained a lot, usually more at the end. I mean, you always get the wrap up in the original where it's like, oh, well, this person went on to do this and this happened in their life. But it always seems like with the new one that has more implications. Like there's the one where he's in a doctor and he ends up getting a drug pulled that ends up saving thousands of lives over the course of time. So, you know, it's not like just like, all right, well, we touched this life, which touched 1 or 2 more lives. Great. So I'm actually going to say the new Quantum Leap versus like Discovery.
Yeah, but I mean, I'd probably give it to Trek as a franchise because, to be fair, they never thought they were going to do anything past TOS, and now they brought back a show based on Star Trek 10 different times.
Right. Yeah, Star Trek has more broad appeal.
Yeah.
And one thing I'll definitely say, Star Trek, though, has changed its key formula a lot. TOS and TNG were a lot about the human condition just told through an in-space sci-fi lens. Right? Where Quantum Leap, going from the original to the new, it's still that just human condition one to the next. Whereas like Discovery and Picard, they've told some interesting stories, but it's the exploration of humanity is kind of absent.
Huh.
Well, Picard specifically was the exploration of crap that happened to Picard in his past, mostly.
Yeah, and for me, I know a lot of people like they can't get into it. I love that because for me, I've always wondered like how did the stern block of wood from the encounter in Farpoint get to be the way that he is?
I don't hate that they tried to humanize, or well, not really humanize him, give him this story. I just feel like it was a little late when he was like a 98-year-old android. Not that they had any way around to that because Patrick Stewart's getting up there, but
Yeah.
I wish it had been explored earlier.
That's fair.
Not that we're here to talk about that, so I digressed.
Well, we're here to compare Star Trek to Quantum Leap. We're doing that. So any other little comparisons or things we want to talk about Leap? Before I do, we'll do an out of 10 for the Leap franchise.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think Leap is the type of show that could sustain ongoing franchise status, or is it better as like a few seasons here or there?
That's a great. It would hold my attention, like Doctor Who does to some people for 50 fucking years. I would
60.
watch it every single week. Yeah, however long, whatever. 80. I don't know. It's been around for way too long. But no, I can see how the average person would get tired of it over Star Trek.
What if they brought every Star Trek captain into Leap? Avery Brooks can leap for 3 years, and then Kate Mulgrew. And then Michael Burnham and make everyone angry.
Well,
I don't know, man.
I don't know about those specific characters doing leaps, but yeah, I could see it being like a Doctor Who thing where you got a new Doctor every series. Yeah, I think that would work, ish. Yeah, I would love to see Avery Brooks leap or do absolutely anything at this point. All right.
Yeah, I think I'm out of questions.
Then let's do an out of 10 here. Well, last week I gave Star Wars a 7.5 as a franchise. Even though there's way less material to work on here, I'm going to give Leap an 8.5. It has always been my second favorite sci-fi series after Star Trek. Recently I've seen Battlestar Galactica, and that I'm gonna have to really think about whether that has displaced Quantum Leap for me next week, because that's a great show. But overall, yeah, 8.5, because the exploration of humanity pieces and touching on like all of the problem of the day pieces and like highlighting all that kind of stuff, it really works for me personally. 8.5.
Okay. I think I'll go with a solid 9. A lot of it is carried by the charisma of Scott Bakula, but he carries it well. Yeah, you have life lessons, you have overarching lessons about the world, enough little quirky things thrown in there to make you think, wait a minute, was this real? Did this actually happen? I love the relationship between Sam and Al. I can't imagine that the new series would bring it down for me at all. And we complain about, like they're saying they're complaining about wokeness. Like these people must have been watching it back in the day and realized it was woke without realizing it was woke, because that's kind of the point of the whole thing.
Even more so than Star Trek, because it's not veiled in, look, a bumpy-headed person. It's literally like, hey, look, here's my neighbor. He's a black guy, and he's being harassed. Let's deal with that.
Mm-hmm. Solid 9.
So unlike Star Wars last week when I said the newer stuff brought it down a little bit in my opinion. Yes, there are things to complain about in the new Quantum Leap. Not the things that were generally presented as the problems, of course. But I don't think it brings it down at all. If anything, it gives it a kind of a new fresh coat of paint and a new update for the modern era, even if it doesn't recapture the same magic exactly of the original, but it's not going to. It's a different day and age, and it's not trying to do the same thing. So I think that actually bolsters it. Probably going to go with an 8.5 as well.
Okay.
Yeah, just to clarify my 8.5 a little bit more. Like, I would like to give it a 9, but I think Star Trek is even only a 9 out of 10. Both have problems and really like goofy episodes. And Quantum Leap, like there is especially in the first, the classic Quantum Leap, the first 2 seasons, there's like 3 good episodes for me, and the rest is like, wow, it's really soap opera-y and like, okay, well we got through it, great, and then it gets a lot better, which is a lot the same with Star Trek. I mean, those first 2 seasons of TNG, couple of great episodes, and some stuff to get through.
Right.
So yeah, unfortunately I can't give it more than an 8.5. I would love to give it like a 9 and then give Star Trek a 10 when we're all done with this. But realistically, even Star Trek, it's got a lot of problems.
Is there anything that could be a 10 that wasn't canceled after like 4 perfect episodes? I mean, the only thing I hear people really try to say is perfect is Firefly, and I wouldn't even consider that perfect.
Wow. That's a stretch.
Just because there's so little, they didn't have time to really fall apart at all.
When you consider the fact that the main characters kind of seem to be a metaphor for Confederates, not so much.
All right. Any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Yeah, answer me this. We kind of touched on the whole thing with the trilogy and how Sam wound up fathering a child. Did they at least like make a connection to that in the new Quantum Leap about it? Because by the end of that episode, that girl was working on the project trying to bring him back. Nope. Was there even a mention of this?
There are connections and mentions to the original series. But not specifically that.
If you want to
find a way to watch it anyway.
Well, if you want to get into fan fiction, in the late 2000s or early 2010s, there was a full hour-long fan-made episode where Sam saves Princess Di, but it's after the series, and like he's just kind of leaping by himself without help. And in that one, it's referenced that his daughter is still in the project.
Fan written, or is this like a filmed thing?
Oh, it's fully filmed.
Wow.
It was pretty good. It was done well.
The only external stuff I've done is some of the novels, which I actually have.
I have her had
right here.
One knocking around somewhere.
I think it's called A Leap for Di, and you can find it on YouTube.
I don't know why I thought you were going to say Princess Leia for a second.
So he can leap into aliens.
Well, that's still the past.
A long time ago.
In a galaxy over there somewhere. All right. Well, this has been fun. And next week, we're going to get into some Battlestar Galactica with a whole different cast of people. I'd like to thank Scott and Windgrace for joining me today. I'd like to thank all of you for tuning in. So until next time, live long